We have here Riley Miller. He's a law student at Drake University and a clerk in the Marion County Attorney's Office. He's a Republican who is currently undecided. Riley?
Thank you. On the debate stage, you have somewhat abandoned the tact and diplomacy that I would look for in a president. I'm all for keeping it real and dogging the establishment, but there's a gravitas that I look for in those who represent our country. How do you see the balance between keeping it, being authentic, and maintaining that presidential demeanor?
I appreciate the question. I think it's very candid. This is what I love about Iowa. I get tougher questions from you guys than I do from the media. That's good. It's why we're here. So I appreciate that. Look, here's the standard I use for holding myself to or holding any president to. I want us to be able to look our kids in the eye and tell them that I want you to grow up and be like him. It's been a long time since we've held our presidents to that standard. That's the standard I want you to hold me to. That's a high standard. Now, I think about that in judging the way that I comport myself in different areas. Am I going to tell my kids to go to school and be a bully? No, I'm not. But I'm going to tell them, if somebody bullies you or hits you, you're going to hit them back 10 times harder. And that's the way I'm going to lead this country. You have to be, as we say in our family, you have to be strong enough to protect your kindness. So if you watch those debates carefully, I don't engage in four-letter words. I mean, there are other candidates who have called me dumb, scum, and worse that I'm not going to repeat here. I didn't go after them, but if they're going to come after me, I'm not going to be a president, whether it's Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin or anybody else, who's going to roll over. When I'm leading the United States, the same rule applies. If you hit us, we hit you back 10 times harder. But it's not for the sake of being a bully. It's for protecting our inner kindness, too. And I think it's important that we have a president that has both of those attributes. I've done more podcasts probably than most presidential candidates in history combined, mostly because podcasts are new. I'll admit that. But I will tell you, that's a different setting. And so I think it's the book of Ecclesiastes that teaches, and my faith teaches me the same thing. There's a time and place for everything. There's a time and place for fortitude. There's a time and place for justice. There's a time and place for mercy. And I think it's going to take all of those attributes, every last ounce of each of those attributes, to stand for this country, to reunite this country and revive who we are. You don't want a wilting flower in the White House, but you also want somebody who understands what we are fighting for. That's the standard I want you to hold us to. We will aspire to hold ourselves to. And I think that sometimes being a parent is what gives me my moral clarity. And I hope through the rest of this campaign, we're just getting warmed up, I hope to be able to earn your trust that, yes, I do have what it takes to tell you the truth. I'm not going to hide the truth from you. If you want someone who's going to speak truth to power, vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you, to the Republican Party. Do it unvarnished, without sugarcoating, and I don't do much sugarcoating. But also somebody who, as you, I believe, want, can stand for the ideals that would make our founding fathers proud and would make our children proud as well.
Speaking of those debates, let me ask you about something that you said at the debate last week. You used the phrase inside job to describe what happened on January 6th. The next day, Capitol rioter Alan Hostetter highlighted your comments at his sentencing. He is going to prison for 11 years. Hostetter threatened members of Congress. He brought a hatchet, knives, pepper spray, stun batons, tactical gear to the U.S. Capitol. Are you concerned that a convicted felon like that is now promoting your comments in court?
So here's my concern, Abby, and I want to tell you guys where I'm at. If you had told me, it's close to 3 years ago that January 6, 2021 happened. If you had told me 3 years ago, back when I was a biotech CEO, not steeped in this world, I was just consuming passive media, but was focused on my world of developing medicines. If you had told me that January 6th was in any way an inside job, the subject of government entrapment, I would have told you that was crazy talk. Fringe conspiracy theory nonsense. I can tell you now, having gone somewhat deep in this, it's not. I mean, the reality is this. We do have a government, first of all, we have to acknowledge, that has lied to us systematically over the last several years about the origin of COVID-19, about the Hunter Biden laptop that we were told was false by 51 CIA experts and otherwise before we now know that it was true. You can go straight down the list, the Trump-Russia disinformation collusion hoax, all of it. Now we come to January 6th. The reality is we know that there were federal law enforcement agents in that field. We don't know how many. I think it's
Mr.
shameful. And if I may
Ramaswamy,
finish just answering,
well, let me
this
just.
is really important.
I'm gonna go ahead and interrupt you here because
Because
you're
I know
saying
this
that there
establishment
were,
doesn't approve of this
you're
message.
saying
I know
that there
this,
were
but
federal
we should be able to
agents.
talk about this.
You're saying that there were federal
This
agents.
is
in the
important to
crowd.
talk about.
You
This
are
is
saying there
important.
were federal agents in the crowd
Yes.
on January 6th.
Yep.
There is no evidence that there were federal agents in the crowd on January 6th.
So why, before Congress, when pressed on what the number was, they didn't say there were none? They just couldn't say how many there were.
So you're saying that that you have not seen any evidence
So
that
we've
there
seen
were,
multiple.
and so you
We've seen
assume that there
multiple
were.
informants suggesting that there were. We know people were FBI informants who were asked to
Is
do
there
things.
any
May
evidence?
I just finish this, and you can come back and question me?
Let me
Abby? 'Cause
clarify.
I know it's very uncomfortable for you.
I'm going to clarify my
I know this is
question
an uncomfortable issue for many
because
people, but we have to do the truth here.
I'm going to clarify my question because I want to make sure that you understand what I'm asking.
I understand this deeply. And I told you, I was with you 3 years ago. I'm not there now.
Where is the evidence?
Yes.
Where is the evidence that the government had a
So let's
plot,
do this.
an inside job,
But no, I'm going to tell you what
conspired
inside job
to
is, because I'm not going
foment
to, with due
violence
respect,
on January 6th?
I'm
Where's
not
the
going to let you put
evidence
words in
of
my
that?
mouth. I'm going to put my words in my mouth. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by
Where
that.
is the evidence that the
Entrapment.
government was involved
Entrapment.
in planning or executing January 6th?
So I'm
Where's
going
that
to give you hard facts, and if I may, Abby, I know this is going to be a little uncomfortable, but we're going to go through this, and you can push
Just
back
waiting
on it
for
after
the
that.
evidence.
And you can push back on that, and let's do this fairly. Why did they suppress footage of now what's been released? 200 hours of footage of shooting rubber bullets into that crowd, shooting tear gas into that crowd. You didn't see that before. You saw what the response was to that. Now you see footage coming out of actually rolling out the red carpet for Capitol Police allowing people
Ramaswamy,
in
again,
right through the front
the
door.
vast majority of the
that
footage
video evidence should have been released
shows,
before, Abby.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
That
the
evidence
vast
should have been
majority
released
of the
before.
footage shows
And my deeper
police
question
officers
is this.
being overrun
and I want to talk about one more
by
case.
violent
This is really important.
riders. That's
Yeah, I'm
what
going
the
to
vast
I'm going to give you some hard facts.
of it shows.
So here's what entrapment
can't
is.
cherry pick.
I'm not cherry picking.
You
If I
cannot-
may finish,
you
Abby.
cannot
If I may
cherry
finish,
pick
Abby. I'm not cherry picking.
examples.
To the contrary. To the
You
contrary.
cannot
You know who
cherry pick
cherry-picked?
examples
You know who cherry-picked?
and
The
say that
government
that
did.
is what happened
The
on
government
January
cherry-picked
6th.
12 hours of footage when there was 200 hours of footage. So cherry-picking was the government, not me. Release the whole thing. And let me just finish one thing, too, because this is super important as a topic.
So
I think this is a civil libertarian issue of our time.
When we are
Gretchen Whitmer's
talking-
kidnapping. I want to be really clear on this, because it's the same issue in the same FBI, same even part of the FBI. 3 people who were in an alleged plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer were acquitted at the end of trial because it was entrapment. That is, government agents put them up to do something they otherwise wouldn't have done. They gave them credit cards with spending limits of up to $5,000, encouraged them to buy munitions, plan something they weren't otherwise willing to plan. So much so, and I want people at home to know this, especially CNN viewers to know this, is that one of the jurors went to those defendants and apologized afterwards, gave him a hug, apologized, seeing what the government had put a poor guy up to who had to go to some Mexican restaurant across the street to get hot water. These people were exploited with credit cards up to $5,000, FBI agents putting them up to a kidnapping plot that we were told was true but was entrapment. Same thing with the Capitol Police, people letting them in freely. Many of those people then being charged.
Ramaswamy, look,
the government cannot put you up to do something and then charge you for it. That's wrong.
I don't want to have
It's wrong to the left or the right.
I don't want to
care.
have
It's wrong.
to. I don't want to have to interrupt you. I really don't. But I don't want you to mislead the audience here or
I'm
at
not.
home.
Abby, I think they've been misled by the mainstream media.
14 people.
The mainstream media has misled them.
14
Release
people
the
were
video
charged in that plot. A majority of them were convicted.
I said 3 of them were acquitted on grounds of entrapment. That's a fact. Dispute me. Was I wrong about that?
What folks need to understand.
Was I wrong about what I said?
What
I was
folks
not.
need to understand
3
is
people
that
were acquitted on grounds of entrapment.
9 were
a juror apologized.
9 were
Yeah,
convicted.
but the 3 who were put up should have never got to that stage of a
going back
trial.
to the January
okay?
6th
That's
issue.
unacceptable in the United States.
Look, I just want people to understand. 3 people were acquitted. 9 people were convicted
I
in
heard
that
you, Abby.
plot.